in the live chat. That's
There we
all we need.
go. Hello, folks. Welcome to this very special Thursday night extravaganza wildcard viewers choice Q&A. It's all about y'all tonight. So sorry for the technical delays at the beginning, but somebody was foolish enough to hand me the reins to this bitch, and I'm already running it into a ditch. So I am joined tonight by my lovely and talented and badass bass playing in uniform co-host, Mr. Scott Moon. How you doing, buddy? I'm glad we figured that shit out.
I know, it's awesome. See, Josh is watching us from the sidelines. He's already talking smack in the message.
Oh yeah, he just did a gif.
Oh yeah, nice. He's nice. Good one.
Yeah. All right, whatever.
Share with the class, everybody.
Put on your bombs or something, Josh. All right. So anyway, tonight we wanted to just kind of make it about everybody that's hanging out with us and address some questions that we don't always get to during the regular show. Who am I seeing out there tonight? We got J.R. Hanley's with us. We got Rick Partload, 1966 Rick P. We've got who else did I see?
Bar of the
Aliens
day.
Here. Bard's here.
Ken, of course, was first as usual.
Some guy named Hayes. I don't know who that is.
He's our resident skeptic. He can't
believe it works.
Yeah.
He's gonna go looking for Bigfoot.
All
right.
He's so hammered right now.
Anyway, like I said, I just thought maybe we could instead of everybody listening to Josh and Scott and myself drunkenly ramble about whatever topic happens to be going through our heads at the moment, we could actually address some specific questions. Now, I went back and looked at the original announcement for this thing, and I looked at some of the topics you guys came up with, and some of them are actually pretty big topics that I think maybe we should save for one of the regular roundtable shows. But I'm going to read off what we got here, Scott, and if there's one you think you jump on, why don't you just let me know, okay?
Okay.
First one I've got is promoting books. Then we've got constructing good dialogue. That's one of the ones I think maybe would work for a bigger scale roundtable show.
Yep.
How not to overuse common phrases and adverbs. Balancing show and tell when it comes to using dialogue in a story. Weaknesses in published writing that we've noticed and how we can avoid those. And keeping a series fresh while at the same time satisfying reader expectations. Any of those jump out at you, man?
Or read me the last one again.
Keeping a series fresh while at the same time satisfying readers' expectations. As in, if you're getting into the third, fourth book in a series, not rehashing the same thing over and over again, just trying to keep your readers happy, how to keep the stories kind of fresh and crisp.
Uh-oh, I have a dog in here. Mavis. Hi, Mavis. You run off now. She's way too short to be seen here. I think we could have some fun with the dialogue. And I like that last one. I hadn't really thought about that consciously, but I think that's always a fear is what do you do with the third book or the fourth or the fifth? I find the third book in a series usually the hardest to write for some reason. I don't know. I've seen other people like over 20 books and other places talk about the writing kind of hurdles, and it seems like book 3 tends to be hard for some reason. I don't know if that's because the magic is wearing off or if you just have a lot more expectations, reader expectations. So I think we could talk about that. We could do dialogue. The first one, marketing your book, is so easy. I don't think that we should even bother. I mean,
actually, there's one thing I do want to talk about.
They market themselves. Books do. You just put it on Amazon, you hit publish, and then the rest is done.
They just go and then you get your weekly dump truck full of money backed up to your door.
Yeah, just fat stacks of cash just falling out of the sky on you.
Actually, that's one. Actually, I as far as promoting goes, that's actually something I've been playing with a little bit. Myself this week. You can do the paid promotions like AMS ads, Facebook ads, that kind of stuff. You can do the paid email list blast, BookBub obviously being the big one there. But I was listening to, I think it was a Somewhere Book show this week. And
with Brian Cohen and
with Kukral. Kukral was talking. He was talking about how he kind of thinks that all of those, that the buying public has kind of become oversaturated with those. And he was of the opinion that we've reached a point where it's more about direct connections, you know.
That could be true, but I have an idea on that.
Yeah,
too,
and just because I just did an urban fantasy novel, I decided to go into a Facebook group and ask that question, you know, or just ask some questions. How do you guys pick new novels to read? How do you guys, you know, pick like which kind of protagonist you like, that kind of thing. And my first question in that group, and this was a readers group, not necessarily a writers group. So I did it yesterday, and it's gotten like 200 comments or something since yesterday. So, you know, and I've had people in that thread without me actually trying to push my book say, hey, what's your links and whatnot? You know, let me check your stuff out.
Right.
So I really think there might be something to what he's saying about putting yourself out there and trying to make those personal connections, because that's way outside my comfort zone. But I mean, I got a really good response.
Definitely got a network, and people are interested, you know, and I think that is true. If you don't put it out there, nobody's ever going to see it. You can't be, I was at a conference, they talked about that. You have to be able to say, hey, I'm a writer when you meet somebody new on the street, and this is my book, and give them the pitch. You can't be embarrassed to do that or feel like it's somehow, like me, almost like it's so pretentious to say I'm an author to somebody who I don't know. But on brought up the marketing is so saturation. That's a term that's used a lot, but it's not used very precisely, I don't think. And so so I think there's two parts of it. Those marketing strategies have saturated the people who are already buying ebooks. But part of your marketing strategy should be finding new readers who haven't come to the party yet. So I don't know where the bridge is there, but I think it's easy to just focus in on the one thing that we all know. And I think that, and by the way, Rick, I'm glad that you don't have a problem with book 3, but you're a writing machine. So I was trying to type some comments back in the live chat, but doesn't really work with this setup. So I'm not trying to ignore you all. I'm just reading out of one corner of my eye. But so do we want to talk more about your experience with putting that question out there?
Well, you know, really there's just one other thing that kind of jumped out at me is that wasn't so much about putting myself out there. Nobody for the first, you know, 50, 60 comments, nobody really cared what I wrote.
Right.
But they would make comments and I would reply, and it was more like them getting to know me. And then once they had done that, and this was just one or two people, it wasn't like everybody jumped on the Chuck bandwagon, but a couple of them sent me a message like, hey man, where can I find your stuff?
There's people right now getting C. Stephen Manley tattoos.
Exactly. Exactly. I have thousands of fans now. But I think the point is, it's not so much about you going and saying, hey, I'm a writer and I write books, as much as it is about, hey, I like this kind of book too. I happen to write this kind of book. What do you think about this aspect of that? And not really pushing your stuff, but more like asking them what they think and what they like, and seeing where those two things can intersect. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I think if you find an urban fantasy, in your case, group, and hang out there, then eventually, you know, you can become part of the group, show interest. And that's the thing, is you got to find the right groups where the right genres are. In my early marketing errors were, I'd take any marketing deal that looked good, and they were very non-specific. A lot of them were romance or urban fantasy romance, and they didn't help me at all because they were the wrong genre for what I was trying to do, but I didn't know any better. So
Rick wants to know if any of the people that I talked to were skeptical of my motives, because some people get all prickly when authors pop up and start asking questions. If any of them were, they didn't voice it. And I never got the impression from any of them that they thought because I even said it a couple times, look guys, I'm not trying to sell anything. I really am just trying to gather information for my own use, because, you know, if you just sit around and wait for fan mail, you'll never learn anything. So I try to be very upfront about the fact, yes, I'm an author, but I'm really not trying to sell y'all. I'm just trying to find out what people like so that I can put that knowledge, into my work.
There are people who go on there with their thinly veiled pretense of asking a question, but really they just want to put their book out there.
Right.
But
Well, I was very careful.
Tell the
I
difference.
did not bring up my books or how I write or what I write at all unless I was specifically asked.
Yep. That's the way to do it. We also have a couple of people that we always, and people may see them on the Keystroke Medium page sometimes. There's a couple of authors who will just blast everybody, every single Facebook group in the world without asking. And we always just delete them.
Yeah, I mean,
we have a term for it, but I'm not sure if are we doing PG-13 tonight or?
I'm dude. You know, F-bombs fall out of my mouth and I don't even know it. So you know, one other marketing thing that is interesting, but I don't have enough facts to talk about it in detail. Recently, Brian Meeks was over on 20 Books, and I think on his AMS ads Facebook page he has, talking about why you should raise your book. And this argument comes up every now and then. Oh, the price thing.
Right, that everybody should raise their books. And it's a neat theory. And I've always resisted it because for me, I really believe in it's a simple economics principle as the, as the market will bear. If people will pay 99 cents for a book, then that's the price that the book should be. You know, if they'll pay $50 a book, then that's the price it should be. But you usually feel like, and everybody sees their ranks go down, you know, and that was part of his argument, is that your rank doesn't matter that much. And that's true to a certain extent, because your rank doesn't actually generate you any money. So, you know, we've all put our books out there, lower the price, sold a whole bunch of books. And then as soon as you bring it back to full price, then it slows down. Well, it would. But so what makes this difference from my experience this week is that I actually raised all my books that were full books to $4.99, which is as high as I've ever had my books priced. And then I raised all of my shorter books to like $2.99 and so on and so forth. And then I just had my short stories at 99 cents. And then I started doing some Facebook ads, which I've never had good luck with. I've never had good luck raising the price. I've never had good luck with Facebook ads. And over this last few days, I've sold a surprising, not a huge number of books. Nobody's going to be impressed, but I sold way more than I thought I would sell at $4.99. More books than I sold the same, like if you took like 4 days from last month and compared them, I sold more at $4.99 than I sold at like 99 cents and $2.99.
Really?
And then I had told a good friend of mine who sent out his newsletter that I was going to have a sale, and he'd asked me, do you have anything going? I said, I'll just make a sale just for your newsletter. And so I dropped all my Enemy of Man books to 99 cents. But it was like the third day that they were $4.99, and I sold I think I sold 15 or 20 books at $4.99, which for me in one day in that series is a lot. And then of course I dropped the price. Then I sold a whole bunch more the next day. And then when I realized that in his newsletter, he hadn't really discussed price, he just mentioned my books, I went and put them back the way I wanted to for this experiment. And then they continued to sell fairly well. Like I said, not earth shattering, but I expected to see zero sales at $4.99. And I've sold more than I did last month, where most of my month was 99 cents. It doesn't make any sense. I don't understand it. Somebody smarter than me have to look at it. So
so much of this is just like reader impression, reader expectations, buyer. I should say buyer, not necessarily reader.
Right.
But JR says the rank is just a reflection of the number of sales, and what we should care about is profit. Yeah, sure. I think the two might
I think Craig
have a correlation, but and that's really interesting what you're saying about raising the price, because a lot of the comments that I got yesterday when I was talking to those folks in the Urban Fantasy group, like a bunch of them said, make sure you're in KU and make sure you don't price yourself out of the market.
Right.
And that kind of goes contrary to what you're saying, but they didn't say they didn't say what pricing yourself out would be.
Right.
I mean, $4.99 may be a perfectly acceptable number to them. I don't know.
And there could be some other things completely like I said, at first I was really shocked, and then I remembered that I had the Facebook ads going. So at first I thought it was just organic, but it wasn't. The Facebook ads, I believe, were helping.
I believe I'm going to start playing more with ongoing Facebook ads myself.
Yeah. And the big takeaway in marketing for that I got was There's a couple of questions here I wanted to make sure we hit too. I had other things going. I had AMS ads going. I had a BookBub paper ads, not a sponsored deal going, but those didn't seem to be generating anything. The Facebook ad did seem to generate this time, although in the past they haven't. But one of the things I picked up from Michael Cooper's book was not necessarily to use the same picture that you use for your book. And so I picked a stock art photo of military sci-fi battle and used that for my book, even though it's not a scene. And
for your ad, you mean?
For my ad.
Yeah.
And that worked well. So
okay,
that's one maybe useful takeaway is when you're doing the Facebook ads, you get some good stock art. It doesn't have to be your exact book cover. All the copy and stuff and things, and then it'll get them there. So that wasn't too bad.
So on the topic of promoting books, go out, make connections with actual people, have conversations, not necessarily about your books.
Mm-hmm.
Get in Facebook groups, wherever you happen to be able to connect with people, and just get to know some folks. Put yourself out there, deal with the possibility of rejection and trolls and that shit, and just and talk to people. And if you do play around with the price,
I lost sound. Are you still there? I lost some sound there, Chuck. I'm locked up or you're locked up. I don't know if I should keep talking or if I should just butt out. Okay, looks like I'm still here, so I will talk. Look, it's just become the Scott Show for 5 seconds. Hopefully, Chuck will come back because he opened the show. So I don't know if it'll continue without him. So now I'm gone. Am I here? All righty. Okay, so I'm just going to talk to myself, I guess, as I message Chuck and see what's going on. But okay, so I'm here, so I'll just keep talking. All right. So hopefully he's going to come right back in.
Hi.
There you are. There you are.
What happened, man? It just suddenly went black on me.
It was panic. We burned down some stuff here. And
Josh did it to embarrass me.
I'm sure that he sabotaged you. I'm sure he did.
He can't stand that I'm doing such a good job.
That's it. Yeah, the intern's rising up to displace him and whatnot. So it was kind of surreal because I didn't know if you were gone or I was gone. So I'm like, do I stand here and talk to myself? Or
anyway, so don't be afraid to play around with your pricing. You never know. Maybe it's good. Yeah. And if you do the paid ads, don't be afraid to play around with the pictures and the blurbs and all that stuff, because a lot of this is throw it against the wall, see what works. Go ahead, man. Sorry.
Just last thing, just on what you said with Facebook, be cautious. Start with a very small budget, monitor it constantly, and proceed with caution, because Facebook will take all the money that you say. AMS ads, the problem is they won't spend. Facebook, they will spend all your money. So don't have $100 a day budget unless you have $100 a day to spend.
Well, I noticed though the last time, because I did one for that sale that I had on Master of Hounds last month, and I just did one the whole time I had the price at 99 cents. And I noticed that now you can actually set your bid. Like I had my bid set at something like 20 cents. It wouldn't go over that. It's just like you do with AMS ads. With
AMS or Facebook?
Facebook. I was very surprised when I saw that option.
I haven't seen that.
It's when you're setting up your ad set, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but it gives you the option to where it bids for you, or you click a little button there and it says to set your own maximum bid, I think is what it said. Something like that.
Take a look at that. I did find
that helped keep it from like sucking the bank account dry.
I did find that if you target your market a little bit better, because I was always in the past, my Facebook ads are always like 63 cents, which is really high if you listen to Michael Cooper. But I did a split test on age and gender and stuff, and I found out that most of my readers are male, and most of them are 40 and over.
Not surprising.
And so I kind of shifted my stuff more towards that demographic on one ad, and I had like, I think it was, I got to 11 to 12 cents a click, which is really good for me. I was really
Yeah.
excited. So that
All
probably
right.
exhausts all my knowledge. Let's talk about one of the other topics. Which one do you
Okay.
want to do?
Well, let's do this real quick too, guys. Everybody watching, like I said, this is kind of about y'all and y'all's questions. Do any of you have something right now that has occurred to you want us to address?
They're talking about BitChute in the
I have no idea what that is. It sounds like a dirty sex act.
we should talk about BitChute. BitChute.
Bitch. Why are we calling people bitch?
I don't know. I guess I divided that word into different parts than you did.
BitChute.
BitChute. BitChute. It's BitChute. We're going to BitChute. So I don't know if the chat froze or not. Somebody JR said it did. We were talking about good.
All right,
good
so we had, keeping a series fresh versus keeping it fresh while at the same time satisfying genre expectations for the readers.
Absolutely, let's do that.
Actually, one of the ones that I think, and people may disagree with me on this, that has actually done a pretty good job at this is the Dresden Files urban fantasy series by Jim Butcher.
I haven't read the whole series, so
I've read every one of them and all the short story collections. I'm a Jim Butcher fan in general. I've read his epic fantasy stuff. The only thing I haven't read is he did this thing called the Aeronaut's Windlass or something, and I haven't gotten around to that yet.
Yeah.
But I'm a big fan of the Dresden Files. And those books, yeah, Ghost Story was that was kind of a transition piece. He was kind of trying to change things up because anyway, sorry, Rick, I could go on about that for hours, man. But what he has done is he started that series off with Harry Dresden, the main character, just being like this PI/wizard.
Right.
Okay. That was his whole deal. He sat in his office like Sam Spade and read books until a client showed up, and there were femme fatales, and then there's the whole magical side of it. And then very gradually over this, I think he's on his 16th book in that series. Things changed, he went from being this PI to being more of a magical type cop. And at the same time, the relationships he had with his other characters kind of grew and changed. And I mean, I don't want to drop any spoilers if there's anybody that wants to read the books. But by the time you reach it where he is, his life is radically different. I mean, right. He doesn't have the office for the PI thing anymore, and he's a radically different character. But with the exception of a couple, I mean, that many books, you're going to have weaker ones and stronger ones. For the most part, the entire series, every single book still hits those urban fantasy tropes, and they still deliver the urban fantasy experience. And what kept them fresh was the way the characters matured, how his life changed in big and small ways, how his relationships with the supporting characters changed, how their lives changed because they know Harry and they got mixed up in all the magical stuff. And I think that to keep a series like that fresh, it's not so much about finding a gimmick, it's about letting the characters grow and change, right, just like a normal human being would, because he writes those books in such a way that, people that were children in the first book are teenagers now.
Right.
So it's like this one big life expanding out. And I think it's things like that that keep a series fresh, not necessarily just finding some new trick to make it.
Well, because you have the leveling up problem with lots of series, and that's hard to do. A certain amount of it, I guess, is necessary. And like a lot of our live chatters are talking about the series. And like you said, he's getting more magical and less PI focused.
Right.
But it kind of feels like that would be natural to me in a fantasy, because you usually start out kind of soft, the soft introduction on the magic, like not too much, like the character in the real world, and then they eventually accept the call of action, go on the hero's journey and all that stuff. But
yeah,
so
I have some idea where this is all supposed to end up because I've watched a bunch of interviews with him and I've heard him talk about it, and I know things from early in the series that I know are going to come back by the end. And he's got 18 books in the series planned, and then a trilogy to wrap up the entire thing, and that's going to be like apocalyptic. So I think what's happening is the reason it's ramping up into more fantasy and less street level urban fantasy is because his idea for the end of it is this big apocalyptic threat that Harry has to deal with.
Right. That'd be cool. So what do we do to keep a series fresh? What are some techniques that we can kick around or play with?
Well, like I said, just don't let the characters be static. You know, don't let it be the James Bond model where, unless that's what your readers want. But if you're looking for stories that are organic and grow, you don't want your characters to just be this one thing that shows up to fight the threat. You know, I mean, that's because if the reader's looking to get immersed into something that feels real, well, there's nothing more real than the fact that everything changes whether you like it or not, and for good or bad. So your characters need to kind of have that same dynamic going on, and that's just one more level where a reader can relate to a character. Because I remember in one book I was reading, and Harry starts talking about, like, my knees hurt like hell after I ran up that flight of stairs. When did that start being a thing? And I'm like, here's this guy who can throw fireballs around, but he still, you know, his knees hurt just like mine do. You know what I'm saying? So don't, you know, unless your readers are looking for the Mac Bolan James Bond executioner type hero who just comes in and kills everything and saves the day, you want them to grow and change and mature. And I think that's what keeps a series fresh and kind of vibrant for readers.
They've tried to deepen James Bond's character.
The last series of films.
Yeah. Mostly just made it extra dark.
I'm talking about the novels from the 60s and stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So somebody had a question. Oh, where was it? Blake Arthur Peel talked about maybe asking readers what they wanted to see from future books, and then maybe that would be a good idea to keep.
Yeah, that would actually be good. That's something I really believe in, talking to your fans if you have any.
Do a survey, talk to your fans. Yeah,
I think I have one or two
Stalk
people
them
that live in my house I could ask, but that's about it.
Stalk them on social media. Yeah, well, nobody in my house reads my books, and that's intentional mostly for me because I don't want to be holding back, like. Because especially my earlier books, my urban fantasy books have some pretty graphic. I think Ellen Campbell just read one of my scenes. She immediately messaged me, "What the hell are you doing?" It really borders into horror in a couple of those scenes. But
all my stuff is worse slant to it.
And so
Kayleen said, "I'm sorry, go ahead."
No, do it.
Kayleen says, keep in mind what's happening beyond the characters, the government, different cities, gangs, whatever you have in your world, and how they could conflict with the characters' goals. Even if it has nothing to do with the story arc, it could add depth. That is very, very true, you know, because there's always shit happening around us that we're not involved in that might indirectly affect us. So that's a really good way to kind of keep things going. You know, maybe in one book you talk about him watching something on the news about this thing that's happening somewhere else, and then 2 books later it's suddenly on his doorstep. You know, that kind of thing can kind of add to stuff. Good point, Kayleen.
Also think that if you're writing a series, you have your conflict and story arcs for each book that need to be resolved. But I think if you're writing a series, you probably need to think big, you know, because it needs to be a problem that can't be completely either in its complexity or its actual size or its danger, that the characters aren't going to get it completely dealt with in one book. And it would make sense that there would be another problem without just the same thing.
Yeah, it's like Buffy said, there's always a bigger bad.
True.
JR had a good, excuse me, KR, Ken, he says, a serial will keep a character the same like James Bond. A series, you expect the characters to grow. That's a very good distinction, serial versus series. I like that.
Yep.
JR wants to know which is better. Well, that depends on who the reader is. You know, some people want just that same exact experience with a different twist every single time.
So how are we differentiating serial and series?
Serial is where is that 1960s James Bond model I was talking about, where the hero is just this
each
figure.
episode's complete. They don't connect.
They don't really change. They don't really grow. There's no real character arc for the hero. It's more about
you could read those
kind of thing.
And you could read those out of order, and it wouldn't matter, really.
And it wouldn't matter. Whereas a series is more about character progression.
What kind of cereal at Josh Hayes? Oh yeah, Josh likes cereal. I'm a cereal killer. I eat 4 or 5 bucks of cereal a day. I'll tell you what. Yeah. You ever come home at 3 o'clock in the morning and eat like an entire box of cereal all the way to the bottom? I've done that. That's good.
Not in a long time.
It's good times right there.
JR wants to know if Dark Landing would be a cereal.
Dark Landing is a cereal. They are designed to be standalone. I couldn't resist, but putting some themes that ran through it. So there is a dramatic final episode, which I'm actually pretty proud of. So I hope people get that far. 12 books is a lot to ask people to read. But Craig was just telling me he's having hardback editions made of the entire series. So, and they're too expensive for me to sell because they're like $60 a piece. But I ordered 3 of them, so I'm going to put one on my shelf. It'd be like that thick, and it'd be my first hardback. Yay! I love Raisin Bran.
Yeah, Raisin Bran's good.
So, I had a thought on that, on what we were just talking about. And maybe I lost it. Maybe we need to move on. I think we need to come back to the topic because it is a big deal. I mean, some things like I work with Richard Fox, and he obviously had intended to do a longer series from the beginning, and his series went 9 books, and that was what it took to resolve that. And I think in space opera or military sci-fi, you kind of need to have a longer series because realistically, you're talking about crossing the galaxy and doing huge things. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate that. I'm talking some to the people in the live chat for people who will watch this later, so I hope they don't think I'm just like lost my head. Man, that guy's really random. Wow, so random. Do we want to talk about dialogue or something? Maybe we need to shelve that and come back to the series question.
Actually, the constructing good dialogue thing, I think maybe we should save that as one of our roundtable topics where we can get Josh and Raph in on that one. That's a big topic,
right?
I mean, I'm sure we've all got little tricks and tips. So
I think the only thing you need to do is read Elmore Leonard a whole bunch, and then you can write dialogue. That's really all you got to do.
What about balancing the use of showing and telling in combination with dialogue?
That's a good topic because there's a book, and I should get it off my shelf. I don't think I have it on this shelf, but it's self-editing for writers by like King and Brown or something like that. Remy Brown. A lot of people have seen it, but it makes a very interesting distinction between showing and small showing, because you can do like small showing in just a sentence,
right?
Where you use some unnecessary stuff, and that really pops out to me. But I don't know if that's really that. It would be a good use of our time to talk about that. It's so small. But the other point of that book was they talked about there is a time for narrative summary in a book.
Sure.
And like, for example, an example they use in that book is like if you're writing Friday Night Lights, which is a football movie or a book about, and they have like 20 football games in the season, you don't have to just show all those games. You can do narrative summary on like 5 of them.
Right.
And that will advance your story and serve your reader better than just trying to pound out every action beat, even though those action beats are going to be very similar to the next game and the next game and the next game. So sometimes you need to do some narrative summary. But,
sure. Actually, I mean, whenever I was taking writing classes and stuff in school or seminars or whatever, I always hated when people would get up and be like, well, in my book, la, la, la. But to that narrative summary point, I actually just yesterday in the space opera thing, the Third Brace Cordova that I'm working on, I jumped time. Like I'll do some chapters with his cousin Tess. I'll do some chapters with him. And I finished up a little bit with Brace. And when I jumped to Tess, I had to move her 2 weeks into the future. Right. So I had like a paragraph or so where I explained what she had been doing for the past 2 weeks to get her to the point she was in that scene. Exactly. So that that's, you know, especially when you're talking about space opera and stuff, when you've got these big long journeys and, you know, things take time, or we want to cover every single day. So narrative summaries are great for that.
A lot of times there are transition points, you know, because where a scene flips over, you know, you have a line that'll be like, they came to the gates of the castle, which describes actually a lot of things. But it's like they were on the road, but now they're at the castle, and they came to the gates of the castle is the narrative summary that links those two scenes together. Right. So I would say narrative summary can be used to link a scene. The thing is when it's a paragraph, but some people and some books I've read that were published books and what books that sold well, you might have an entire chapter of nothing but info dump.
Yeah. Well, that's the difference between a summary and an info dump.
Right. And that's just straight out telling.
Yeah. And summary to a point is telling, but you know, everybody likes to flout that show don't tell rule, but sometimes telling is what you need. You just don't need it ad nauseum. And when it comes to dialogue, I think if you write something like, "No," he said angrily, well, that's telling.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say something like, "No," he said, his teeth clenched, that's showing. You know, because you're showing his teeth like no, like he's mad.
And you can choose different words, and you can choose the setting, and you can have them say something that nobody would ever say, not angrily, because it's just not a word that you say unless you're really pissed off. Yeah, you know. Yeah,
yes, that is true, and curse words are great for that.
Situation. Exactly. That's why we should use them as much as possible.
That's right. I'm all for that. Bard of Today says, yeah, but how much one versus the other? Bard, that depends on the story, man. There is no hard and fast law that says you have to have this percentage of one and this percentage of the other. I mean, it's going to depend on the kind of story you're trying to tell. It's going to depend on your writing voice. You know, there's
depends on genre too.
Yeah, and genre. Some are more forgiving than others. So it's really, you kind of have to feel your way out. But on all of these points, because a couple of these things are like balance the show and tell, weaknesses in published writing, how we can avoid them, how not to overuse phrases and adverbs, constructing good dialogue, all this stuff. These are all very important things. They're all very good things. They all mean absolutely nothing if you don't finish a manuscript.
That's true.
Because when I was reading all those things in my head, I'm thinking these folks are worried about this stuff while they're writing the first draft. All of that can be fixed after you type the end. Right. So I don't think that y'all need to worry about this until you have a great big mass of words in front of you that you can go back and chip and polish and grind down into what you want.
You might throw all those words, half those words away anyway. You wind up polishing all these words, and then you're so attached to it, you can't cut it when you realize it needs to be cut.
Yeah,
so
you can't edit a blank page. Exactly. So if that's the case, my impression could have been 100% wrong. But if you are out there and you're working on a manuscript and you're worrying about this stuff while you're typing the sentence and trying to make every sentence that comes out perfect as it comes out, stop it. Finish something. Get from once upon a time to the end and then go back and deal with this shit later. Just enjoy writing. Make it as shitty as you want to make it. It doesn't matter because you can pull it all out later and get the crystals out of the crap and have something to be proud of when you're done. But you have to finish something first. That's important. So rant over.
No, I think your rant is well placed, and I think it's true. And I think that one of the good tertiary effects of all of this rapid release publishing stuff that we talk about is writing speed. And I think writing speed is important. A lot of people, not because they want to publish a book every day, but if you write faster, you're going to get the skeleton of the story done before you lose it. And then you can go in and clean up all those things and add some meat to the bones and things like that. But we talked about, what did we talk about? We were talking about Oh, that was on a podcast I did with Ella Bernard about how to. A lot of her listeners had said that how to not get lost in a story, because when you're writing a big book, sometimes you start to kind of flounder through the saggy middle. But a lot of the times, the real solution to getting through the sagging middle is to go fast. You
Yeah.
know, and then get to the end, and then you come back and you go, man, that's a really crappy middle of this story. But you know what would make it good? I got a great idea. I got while I was writing the ending. I'm going to go back and put it in here. So I think that, like you said, write that shitty first draft, go back and clean up your pronouns and your adverbs and your, you know, usually the answer with an adverb, if it's an ly adverb, usually the answer is just to cut it, and you won't even know it's gone.
Yeah.
I've learned from a very good editor lately who kicks me in the chops all the time that they're actually, yeah, I don't know who that could be. Ellen. But there is a place for the adverbs, and they should be used in those places.
Well, but and that's the thing, is when you use them in those places, they actually have more impact because you don't pepper them everywhere else, you know?
But if you're throwing them in there for just because they seem to flow, that's not always a good reason. So, but yeah, and it's the same thing with profanity. We talk a lot about profanity. Yeah. I had audio book, and I had a narrator that wouldn't say the F word. And there was a couple others. And so I went through and changed or took out all of the F-bombs in this particular book. And it actually had no effect on the story, and what I found is like, I really hate made up words. We've talked about these, like in fantasy, or like making up a word like shalarking or something is supposed to be a profane word. And I hate that. Nothing makes me want to throw a book down. Literally, my number one reason to throw a book at the floor is when they have a made up swear word they use, because then they use it incorrectly. Even if it was a swear word, they use it for emphasis where it wouldn't be, and it's a crutch, and I just hate it. It sounds fake. I'd rather just take it out and make the dialogue stronger without the profanity. And
Gus says bracket.
Yeah, there's a few. Fracket you might be able to get. I like to use Chuck Norris as a swear word sometimes. I find that works. But yeah. Anyway, so that's my mini rant over. We should have the mini rant. All right, so we get more questions.
Audience, anything else you want us to talk about? Anybody need counseling or anything?
They were talking a lot about the hardbacks and whatnot, and I don't know much about that process. That's something that Craig's doing. He knows a distributor, and it's like a single run deal. Because I said, "Well, can I come back later and order more?" He's like, "Nope." But they're
limited supply kind of thing.
Yeah, it's going to be their hardbound books are going to be like custom covers and all kinds of stuff. It's going to be pretty cool.
Pretty sweet, man.
Ken says, "Do you set word counts before you start?" Jared Hanley also doesn't like
before you start a whole book or a session, or what are we talking about? Like a daily word count goal?
I think as far as maybe for a book, I would say it depends on genre. I mean, if you're writing epic fantasy, you better break 90,000, I would say. If you're writing,
Ken says before you start the book.
Yeah.
I always start with a standard goal of 90,000 words.
Right. I like that too.
I rarely hit that exactly. I think my longest book that I've written since I started indie publishing was about 118,000, and my shortest one's been like 86,000, I think it was, something like that. So I have that number, but like everything else with this, don't make that a hard and fast, you have to do it kind of thing, because let the story go where the story goes, you know.
Epic Fanny 90,000 is
the prologue.
Yeah, you're right.
Some of it, you're right.
Knowing this is going to sound very mechanical and formulaic, but I'm going to go there anyway. So knowing what your word count is going to be helps you when you're envisioning the story.
Yeah.
This is the book, this series. This is Story Physics by Larry Brooks. And actually, it's Story Engineering is the first book, but I loaned it to Josh like 3 years ago, and he hasn't given it back. But
Josh.
I know, but anyway, just throwing him under the bus since he's going to talk trash on our podcasting skills. But anyway, one of the things that this Larry Brooks character talks about is the structure. He says we've all heard of the 3-act structure, he says, and I've heard other people say the same thing. In writing, it's more of a 4-act structure. You got 25% in the beginning, 50% in the middle, and 25% at the end. The key takeaways is your character's got to make a decision by 25%. Everything's got to change or something terrible's got to happen about halfway through your book. And this is the most important thing for most writers, is with 25% of your book remaining, those characters have to have all their tools, allies, knowledge, whatever, to some extent in place, because anything that comes after that is going to feel like a Deus Ex Machina.
Exactly. Everything has to be in place to logically end up at the conclusion.
And you need to be, it needs to be surprising, but surprising, but inevitable that they would do the things they do.
Yeah.
But so I took this book, and in movies, it's different. In movies, it's a true 3-act structure. And so right after I read the first in this series, I watched World War Z. And so there's a point where certain things happen. And he says it'll be, in a movie, it'll be 33% and 66%. Something will happen. And if you watch World War Z and I stopped the DVD player, and it was exactly 1/3 of the way is where you first realize it. And we'll go ahead and do spoilers on it. So I hope everybody has seen World War Z, but there's a scene where he's trying to get his family out, and the helicopter comes down to land on him, and he gets blood in his mouth, and he runs to the edge of the building, and he gets ready to throw himself off the building because he thinks he could be turned into a zombie. But earlier he had counted like how long it took him to turn. So he jumps up there on the edge, and he's standing there, and his family's in the helicopter screaming for him to get in the helicopter. Zombies are smashing down the door, and he's standing there counting. He counts to 10. He decides that he's not a zombie. Now he's learned something, made a decision, and he goes and gets on the helicopter. That's exactly 1/3 into the movie. At 66%, they figure out the whole mechanism behind the zombies and why they, basically how they're going to beat them. And then the last third of the movie is them implementing that plan. I mean, it's exactly. And then I've watched several other movies since then. And my point is that you can't really be a slave to that structure, but it does matter, because if that had been, because the pacing was so good, and you felt like, and it was a good lesson in what you need to give to your characters for them to complete their hero's journey, and what they need to decide to do, because they got to make decisions. If they're not making decisions, they're just a passive passenger in the story, and who cares? Yeah,
well, and that story, the movie version of that story, is also a really good example of proper foreshadowing too, because not only did he do the counting and learn something from that, he also saw the zombies running around the sick people,
right?
And then and you weren't super sure what the significance was until that 66% where he figures it out and figures out how to beat them and what they can come up with. And so, I mean, foreshadowing is a big part of that. But no, that was actually, I consider that one of the smarter zombie movies that I've seen.
I thought I was going to hate it. I really thought it was going to be terrible. I thought it was just going to be a bunch of special effects and a gimmick. Yeah. And so when I watched it, I've actually watched it several times. I was surprised. I don't normally watch movies.
JR says that I have the Sanderson problem with wordiness. I'm not sure what that means. Does Sanderson I've only read a couple of his books. Does he have a wordiness problem?
He does the same thing that Robert Jordan does, basically. But it's a genre thing. It's lots of words. But I enjoy it. I read all those books, and I finish them. If you'll finish the 700-page book, then there's got to be something they're doing right. But
yeah, okay.
Just depends on. And Sanderson's also somebody who does, probably wrong, but I believe he's somebody who kind of does some made up swear words that annoys me. But he also builds an elaborate world, and so it kind of makes sense that. The other thing that it's hard for me to read Sanderson sometimes is because he tries to take fantasy to a new place rather than just having the same old elves and dwarves and in Western Europe and whatnot.
I really want to write one of those, just the old-fashioned elves, dwarves.
I know, me too.
Rip off the Dragonlance Chronicles or something, just. Yeah,
but with Sanderson, you have to really pay attention because, literally the ground might not be made out of the same material we're used to walking on. I think it's the Stormlight where when they have these massive storms and these vines kind of grow out of the rocks and then they retreat back in. There's all these reasons why they do that. And if you're just skimming through it, that's going to really be confusing. So you have to, I mean, you got to get into that world.
So it's a true epic, immersive, epic.
It's a true world building experience with Sanderson.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, I said we were going to do this for half an hour, but now we're coming up on an hour. So, guys, is there anything else y'all would like us to touch on? Any questions we didn't get to that you asked that I overlooked? What, Scott?
Bart today says, as far as swear words, does it make sense to have you to have our cuss words in a fantasy or alien world? That's a really good point.
It makes sense to me to have swearing of some sort. It doesn't necessarily have to be, the swear words that we're exactly accustomed to, but I think if you want your characters to feel real, then they need to have some sort of expletive they use in times of extreme stress. In my space opera I'm working on, I figured the worst thing that could happen to somebody who travels through space all the time is to get sucked into the vacuum of space.
Right.
So instead of the word and F-bomb incoming, instead of fuck, they say vac. Because the worst thing that could happen to them is to get vacked, to get sucked into the vacuum. So it's like vac this, vacking that, vac over here, vac you, like that. So
and that also has some of the principles, in my opinion, of a good real swear word, because real swear words, the ones we use the most, that are the most offensive, are kind of percussive and they got a hard edge.
Yeah, exactly.
And it works and it makes sense. Like I said, made up swear words are fine if they're done right, but most of the time they're not, because they take like shit and they call it shat or something. Which shat's a real word.
They dancing around it there. Yeah.
You're shiking me. I'm like, you just made that. You just changed one letter. Okay, so to answer that question, my input is yes. In a fantasy or science fiction world that's truly imagined, they would not have the same swear words, but they would have none of the same words as we do. So I figure you might as well just go with what's natural, what makes the story easy to tell, and what makes your readers entertained. So on that point, I bought this book a while back, and this is the Language Construction Kit by Mark Rosenfelder.
Ooh,
and this will literally, if you are smart enough to do this, you can literally build a language just like the Lord of the Rings. And you develop a script, and there's all these like things like vowel clusters and rhythm patterns and how it's constructed and the etymology of it and stuff like that. And so some people, and there's people who they call them conlangers, and they're really into making up languages. So if you really want to,
who wrote that?
Mark Rosenfelder, Rosenfelder, Rosenfelder. Gotcha. It's the Language Construction Kit.
Yeah,
and
cool.
It goes. What's really cool is, of course, it goes into the Lord of the Rings stuff. I'll see if hopefully we can show this on here. There's the picture right there that's from Lord of the Rings, and that's
Elvish, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the Elvish, and that is the actual written language for the whole thing about one ring to rule them all, and blah 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 blah. So you can take it as far as you want. In my opinion, use the swear words if your character would use them. Don't use them too much. Nick Cole, Jason Onspach made a good point that for commercial, you'll probably sell more books if you go a little bit easier on this profanity.
Yeah.
Because if I swore like I do around just me and three cops and nobody around to offend or embarrass, there wouldn't be a lot to this conversation that wasn't somehow profane, because we just, got profanity, I guess. Anyway.
Okay. Coming up on the hour. Guys, anything else at all? Scott, you got anything you want to throw out there?
Oh, I'm glad we made it.
Okay. Yeah.
glad we got here.
It was a little rough starting out, but I think we did okay despite Josh's sabotage efforts in the back there.
Bart loves linguistics. He should buy that book and write us a keystroke medium language.
I'm going to check that one out for sure. All right, so yes, we've done this now, and I will talk with the guys. And if you guys have any feedback for us, please leave it in the group to give us suggestions. Josh says, "Mwah." But please, suggestions, comments, criticisms, anything at all, just let us know, because I think, again, I think maybe something like this where we talk to you guys and hear from you guys more about what you guys are struggling with, and we try to help you out with that, might make for a good Thursday night thing. And, you know, sometimes it might just be me. Sometimes it might be me and Josh, me and Scott, all three of us. I don't know. But please give us some feedback. Let us know if you enjoyed it, if you found it useful, and we'll see you again soon. Peace.